Welcome to a new edition of the Neon Jazz interview series with Serbian singer, songwriter, multi-instrumentalist, producer, author, and award-winning screenwriter Nenad C. He reached out to Neon Jazz and sent over his new 2022 CD, The Boogie Man. It's a conceptual double album with 16 tracks and 78 minutes of music that is psychedelic and electronic jazz funk fusion inspired by the work of George Clinton. He opened up about this, his history in music, the modern world, and so much more. He's an interesting cat. Enjoy. Hello.
Hi, Joe.
Thank you for reaching out. Thanks for taking a minute out to talk with Neon Jazz about Boogie Man and your music.
Well, thank you for the opportunity, because it's a huge honor for me, and I feel amazing about this all.
Well, let's get into it. Along with politics, we've been living through COVID, a global pandemic. How does it feel to be able to put this out with hopefully the chance to perform this music live now that COVID's slowing down?
Well, as you know, the whole project, The Boogie Man, was done entirely by myself. So from writing the lyrics, the music, playing or performing all the instruments through VST plugins on my computer and so on, it was one type of work, because I was all alone and I used COVID and the lockdown and everything else to do it. But now I'm putting the band together. It's going to be a huge band, 12 members of it. It's a great band, and I'm looking forward to it, because when you work in studio, regardless of whether you're working alone or you're working with the band, that's just one kind of feeling, and it's a great kind of feeling, because you have a lot of opportunities in the studio to try new ideas, to work with equipment that you don't usually work with. But playing live with the band, with the live instruments, that's entirely different thing, because there is that mutual energy that flows between the members of the band, and of course there's the audience. And finally, as you said, the COVID lockdown is, I hope so, finally over. We're preparing for the next season. Basically, we will start playing. The first gig is due to be on Nishville Jazz Festival. That's one of 20 largest jazz festivals in Europe. It's here in Serbia, in the town where I was born, Niš, in the southern part of Serbia. And we should be the closing act of the festival, so that's a great opportunity. And after that, we should play at Belgrade Jazz Festival, also in Serbia. And after that, I hope we will get the chance to play around Europe and maybe around the world.
That's wonderful. So talk to me a little bit about this project. It's about kind of corporate greed and the world collapsing on the main character. Kind of, how did this all come about? How did this experience develop into music?
As I was growing, I was always surrounded by music. That's important to understand. How to understand the Boogie Man as musical concept first. And I'm kind of music listening freak. I listen to so various kinds of music throughout the whole of my life. And when I started, like it was in the beginning, I'm quite a bit old, I'm 56 now. So I started as a young kid at the beginning of the 80s, and I came from something that is now called post-punk. And basically, I got introduced to the funk through post-punk, through Talking Heads and their Remaining Lights and their Fear of Music albums, then through Gang of Four, then through some works from The Clash and so on. And my involvement in funk was, coming gradually during my life. And in the last decade, I was totally dedicated to funk and to jazz funk and basically to the fusion of everything I ever listened to. When you listen, just musically for the beginning, when you listen to the Boogie Man, you can find all sorts of influences. You can find even, like late 80s East Coast white rap, meaning like Beastie Boys or I don't know, Cypress Hill, something like that song. But I use all that just in my personal musical experience, and also to tell the story in the best possible way. And now that story is something that we are all living. I mean, since the economic crisis and the bubble exploded in 2008 in USA, and that crisis pulled over to Europe at the beginning of another decade, 2010, 2011, something like that, and it's still present. We have really living now in sort of dystopian society, almost as it was explained in the movies at the late 70s or beginning of the 80s. Now, this is, the Boogeyman is, although it sounds like science fiction, it is not. This is the world we live in. And, it's just in short, so that the people who listen to this, the story is about a young man in the beginning of the 30s who is living meaningless life, really. He doesn't have anything in his life. He's a stranger to his own life. And on one day, he simply gets fired from his job. And he didn't even like that job. That's not important. The important thing is that he has no illusions about the world he's living. He is simply, how should I put it, disillusioned man living a meaningless life in a pointless world. So he decides to kill himself, to commit suicide. But then I don't want to reveal the whole story for listeners. I don't want to make a spoiler alert or anything else. But something starts to happen that he, from that kind of guy, becomes, put it in quotation marks, a savior of the world. Of course, he doesn't, but nothing is as seems to be. And I used that plot to reveal really everything that's bugging. I mean, literally everyone who has a bit of brain now in society and sees all the corporate greed. I mean, whole nations are led either by corporations or by oligarchs. Freedom is just, personal freedom is just a mirage. It doesn't exist anymore. I mean, you have so many restrictions put in through political correctness. Please don't understand me wrongly. I am pro political correctness, meaning that you shouldn't offend anyone because of his race, color, I don't know, political issues, his sexual orientation. Everyone should have and has to have the right to be what he is, or she is, of course. But political correctness has been used as a sort of fascistic censorship, meaning that whatever you say, there will be someone who can say, I'm offended by this, and you're a fascist. No, I'm not a fascist. I'm using my freedom of speech. But then, on the other hand, you have a real fascist, real Nazis, who are hiding themselves behind the freedom of speech. So we're living in a chaotic world where we're losing compass, really. We don't know what truth is anymore. And there's a song called News that's speaking about how corporate news is blurring all the thing up so that you don't really know what the truth really is. We're living in constant wave of misinformation, wave of lies, and you don't know really if you turn to social networks, if you turn to regular news, whatever, things that you hear or see about the world today are so confronted that you cannot tell what the truth is. And of course, and political corruption comes into that also. So try to tell a story about what the world we're living now is looking like. I hope I made myself clear. So there's a lot of things that should be said about it. I'm trying to be as coherent and as short as possible.
No, that's it. That's actually exactly what I was looking for. So I want to go back in your life. You're a busy guy. You're a singer-songwriter, multi-instrumentalist. You're a producer. You're an author. You're a screenwriter. How did all of this happen? How in the beginning did you get so interested in art that you've diversified to this point in your life right now?
Well, it really came from my childhood and my family background. You know, my parents were a lot into art. So both my brother, I have an elder brother, and I were surrounded by art, by music. when she was a girl, while she was a girl, before marriage, my mother was a solo vocalist of a big band jazz orchestra. My father also had his records. He was a general manager of the puppet company, and so on and so on. So that was some sort of artistic environment that I grew up in. And as I said, I was like a real kid. I was a 15 years old kid when I got into something that was called post-punk. And really, that sort of thing exploded in former Yugoslavia, where I was born. And there were lots of bands playing that. And it was like, fun and interesting to be doing that. So as a young kid of 15 years of age, I made my first band. And believe it or not, in just 3 months after I made that band, and I wrote a few songs. I don't know, we had 4 or 5 songs. We went to some sort of war of the bands that was at the time very popular in Yugoslavia, and we won both first prizes, like first prize from the jury and first prize from the audience. And I was just a 15-year-old kid, and that just gave me a whole other boost to go into that. And during the 80s, while we were still living in Yugoslavia, because it broke up, unfortunately, in that meaningless and so bloody war in the beginning of the 90s, I was just gradually moving toward a lot of things that were, in a way, just music. But after the beginning of the 90s, the breakup of Yugoslavia and everything else, I literally stopped playing music and turned myself into some other forms of art. Of course, I couldn't live only from my art, so I had to do a lot of other things. Mainly, I became anchorman on TV stations, and gradually I even evolved there to head of news department, to the head of the radio stations, TV stations, so on, in order to have enough money. And then, using my spare time, I tried to write. And, as a screenwriter, it's an interesting form, because I already had, when I started screenwriting, at the beginning of the millennia, I was already 35, 36 years old. When I came to that kind of interesting impulse in my life, screenwriting directly came from my knowledge of the TV, of how editing in TV works, of how the whole process works. So I had like 10 years of experience before becoming a screenwriter. So, I won that first prize and I got that award for the best screenplay written in that year. That was in 2007. And after that, I even had two screenplays more. One of them also awarded. And in the meantime, I've also written that novel, the first one, and I'm doing now the second one novel. They're also combining my interest in the world. And all the time, when I was doing that, just to be precise, I did that in stages. I stopped playing entirely from the 2000 until 2017. So there was a 17-year hiatus in my music when I was doing writing, and of course I was doing other jobs. Doing translating, I was doing voiceover directions, all sorts of things to provide my daughter and me a living. So the writing was just, you can call it a hobby. It's not a hobby. I do it on a better level than just a pure hobby, but I couldn't make a living out of writing only. Neither you can, while living in Serbia, you can't live out of your own music. There is a sort of music that it could be called like Serbian neo-folk, and that's the kind of music that you can make a living with. But, that's a shitty music, really. I'm sorry, mind my language, but, that's the worst kind of music that you can ever hear. But people around here like that, and you can play that kind of music on weddings, on, prom nights or something like that, and you can make a living out of it. Or you can play some cover band, you can make a cover band, and then you can make a living. But if you want to play your own music and to live out of it, that's not possible. That's not possible, sorry. So all the time I was working other jobs, which I like. I mean, I like being a translator, especially because I'm translating, I'm subtitling, and I'm doing the translation of movies, TV shows, TV series, and so on. So basically, another type of, just a variation of what interests me in my life. I'm not doing some, I don't know, building construction, legal documents. I don't know how to do that. I know how to do this. That's something that I have to work, and I still have to work in order to provide me and my daughter a decent living. And my music is something that I just do because I love. I know at the moment that I'm not able to live out of it. I'm not able to pay my bills with it or anything else. But I think I still have something to say musically. I still have a lot of potential in me to do that in the right way, to be satisfied while doing it, and to offer something to the people to listen to.
Man, I love that answer. You wrapped up so many things in that answer. I'm so glad that you reached out to me. I really dig the music. I'm looking forward to profiling you and the album on my program. So thank you for joining me today, taking some time out. I really appreciate your story.
Thanks a lot for this opportunity. I'm more than grateful.
Thanks for listening and tuning in to another Neon Jazz interview, where we give you a bit of insight into the finest players and minds in Serbia, Kansas City, and spots all over the globe, giving fans all that jazz. If you want to hear more interviews, go to Famous Interviews with Joe Domino on the iTunes Store. Visit neonjazz at youtube.com, and for everything Neon Jazz all the time, go to the neonjazz.blogspot.com. Until next time, enjoy the jazz, my friends.
Neon Jazz.